On this episode, we'll discuss tips for keeping volunteers engaged and excited to serve. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast, the show that is dedicated to inspiring leaders and empowering healthy churches. I'm Kendall Conner, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jess Moore. How are you today, Jess?
Hi, Kendall. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to jump into this episode.
Me too. This is a great topic.
Yes, we get to talk about something that I'm sure that every church leader has probably been thinking about before, has prayed about before, maybe even stressed about before,
Definitely.
and hopefully not lost too much sleep about it. But as volunteers, volunteers are central to every church, right?
Absolutely. They're so important and challenging to hang on to. Let's just be honest. Let's call it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, let's be real about this. I mean, we know that of course our staff and our leaders and things like that are important to a church, but really it's
Hmm.
those volunteers so often that make Sundays happen. I mean,
Yeah.
where would we be without greeters, without kids ministry leaders and the worship team and the
Yeah.
production team, small group leaders, the park. I mean, all the people. Let's be real honest. The people who make the coffee. Come on, like where
Yes.
where
Yeah.
where
We
will we
need
be
them.
without them?
Exactly. It's really like, you can set a process, but you still need the bodies to make all of that
hmm
happen. They're
hmm
really truly are critical.
Yeah, I think, like the more that you can get your volunteers engaged, the more that you can get them
Mm,
excited and really passionate about these different things that you're
yeah.
doing at your church, the better your church is going to be, the more your church is going to feel alive, in my opinion.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, if your volunteers are tired or they're unclear about what they're supposed to do
hmm
or
hmm
underappreciated, that's one that comes up a lot when we talk about this topic, or they're
Yes.
stretched too thin. You
Yes.
can feel that too. The church can feel that too. And it's a lot less inviting.
Yes, 100%. And I feel like probably people on the other side of this, our listeners today, maybe are saying amen to a couple of these things when we talk about like feeling stretched too thin. I,
Hmm.
I think that's why we want to have this conversation today. That's why we want to be able to speak into how you're caring for your people that are serving at your church and for, helping the people who are there, who are serving, who are have boots on the ground, making this stuff happen. So today, the way we're going to format this is that we're going to have some practical tips that we're going to offer all of you listeners out there to keep your volunteers both engaged and excited to serve.
That's right.
I feel like this is important because this is more than just getting them to say yes to
Yeah.
signing up on the schedule, but actually carrying out that mission, actually providing them with clarity, providing them with
Correct.
care and with purpose, so
Mm.
that when they do show up, and the showing up is important, but helping them to thrive when they get into that spot on Sundays.
100%. People are not just joining your team because you need a warm body. They need to understand the kingdom impact, of what they're doing
100%.
and
hmm
the importance that their specific role plays in the broader mission.
Love that. And so before we jump into this content, before we get into the tips that we have to offer today, I want to encourage all of you listeners out there, hit that follow button. We want to make sure that you're subscribed wherever you're enjoying our show, so that you can stay in the loop as we continue to release conversations like this, resources like this, whether it is an interview like we sometimes do, or
Yeah.
conversations and these tips that we're going to be able to provide today. Subscribing is really the best way to make sure that you do not miss a thing. So,
Hmm.
without further ado, Jess, let's jump into these tips today. Do you want to take the first one? What's our first tip that we're offering our
Yeah.
listeners today?
So, number one, help volunteers see the purpose behind their role.
I feel like this is a good one to start with, right? Like,
Yes.
if we don't have this down,
Foundational. Yeah.
yes, if we don't have this right, I feel like it may be detrimental. Is that too harsh?
I
It will
mean,
definitely make it
can
more
be.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, people do not exactly stay excited about serving when they feel
Mm,
like
that's
they are
real.
just there to check a box or to
Yeah.
complete a task, right? It
Yes.
takes more, like, it takes to keep them engaged. It takes them really understanding the purpose behind what they do.
Exactly, 100%. You know, they're not just like an open door. Why are you really there? You're there to make people feel welcome and maybe, the first as they're walking through, what is the first thing that you get to make them feel? That's really, really important, right? And then kids volunteers are more than babysitters. I mean, this is
Mm,
real to me because I feel like this is the area that I served for a long time, and so that's a huge privilege. But without that being communicated to me, it can definitely feel like you're just babysitting. So, but you're shaping the faith of these sweet kiddos, and that is an incredible privilege. Same thing with production, your production folks, they're not just pushing buttons, and
yes.
I'm definitely not simplifying what this is because I know it's an art, but they're not just there to make this experience look pretty or powerful or whatever. They're there to facilitate worship, which is so important, and remove distractions so that people can have a spiritual encounter. These are just some of the roles, but I feel like understanding maybe the difference between here's what you're physically doing in that role, but here's what you're doing in the impact that you have in the kingdom or in the lives of the people that are coming through your building.
I feel like this is big. And again, it's good that we started on this one because without giving that additional bit of clarity, without providing that vision behind each of those
Mhm.
spots that we have people signing up for, that that people are showing up for on Sundays, they may just I feel like they're going to naturally just drift to thinking it is just that simple. I'm just holding a door, or I'm
Right.
just, I'm waving cars in on the parking lot, and I'll probably give a million guest experience references because that's in this season of ministry. That's what my wife and that's what we help with on Sundays. That's what we help lead. But it is, I feel like so often I'm having to remind people that it literally can be a make or break deal for if people
Mhm.
are gonna show back up to
Yeah.
church again, if they feel welcome,
Yeah.
because if they do not feel welcome, they just are gonna have a hard time feeling like this is a place that wants me here. And of course,
Right.
so often, whether it's guest experience or a greeter or any other area of ministry, we wanna rely on the Holy Spirit. I mean, we help, but we have to do the things that we can do, right? Like,
Right.
do what you
Exactly.
can do, and then you also, rely on God to do the things that only He can do, right?
Sure.
Um,
100%. And I think for the case of this particular example, maybe we
mhm.
back up one level and just say, is your
Yeah.
mission at your ministry even clear? Because if you can
Wow.
tie
Yeah.
things back to that mission,
Mhm.
then and that's a part of your church culture, then that there's
Yes.
not necessarily a question in that area. Sure, they have questions. What time do I show up? Where do I put my stuff? Those are expected, right? And in a
Yes.
perfect world, you've got those things ironed out. We may talk about that here in a minute, but the purpose ties back to the mission.
Mhm.
That should be crystal clear across your entire church and your guest services organization, your volunteer organization.
Yes.
All of that should point back to the mission. And you should be able to tie every single job or role back to that mission, right? So, like, your
Yes.
purpose is X when we are, as a collective body, moving this mission forward. I think that
Yes.
level of clarity is your baseline. What is the mission? And then within my role, what is the purpose of that role that needs to go back to the mission? And then all the other little details, you can work through those, but that purpose is critical, I think,
I
to
l
to
I
helping volunteers stay engaged.
I love that you said that because it reminds me, like, and every church is going to have, a different statement or, like a mission statement that they have.
Yeah.
But I'll just use my own church as an example. We say, everything that we do is so that all people can find new life in Christ.
Mm.
And so literally it may be, we're going to give them the best welcome possible so that
Yeah.
all people can find new life in Christ. Use, like you
Right.
said, fill in whatever it is for your church. But
Mhm.
if you have to, of course, I think you can get granular with those and go with each different role that you have. But
Yeah.
tying it back to that main church purpose, I think is so critical. So I would also just say before we move on from this example, people don't automatically assume that people are gonna be able to make that connection themselves. But I would
Yeah.
say, like, regularly remind them, encourage them to, as you're doing your huddles, maybe even as you're checking in with them as a leader, use every moment that you can when you're communicating with them to bring it back to that mission. right?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
like an example of that is bringing it up in your huddle, bringing it up in your one-on-ones that you're having with them, bringing it up at even as they're serving in those roles on Sundays. Just a quick little
Mm.
reminder, I feel like goes a really long way. Celebrate those wins and remind them
Yes.
why that role matters.
So much. I think one more like real practical example back to kids ministry. It's not how many kids sat in church today. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
important, but that's more
Right.
logistics. That helps you
Right.
understand how many staff members maybe you need to have. I think the better question is how many kids ask Jesus into their heart today? Like that's the purpose,
Yeah.
right? That ties back to your
Yes.
purpose and your mission
That's right.
versus just how many bodies do we need here to babysit the children, right? So
That's right.
that's maybe a tangible way to give an example of that.
Jess, if they don't have anything else down, they're gonna hear about, guest experience, and they're gonna hear
Kidsman.
about kids ministry.
You bet. You bet.
That's all right, we're gonna work maybe in this next one, we can give some examples for some other
New other
places.
examples. Parking. Okay.
That's right. So, let's move to our next tip. Number 2 is to recruit through invitation, not pressure. Now, you may be saying, Kendall, you said that you were going to tell me how to keep volunteers, but this does go back to
Yeah.
as you're recruiting them. But I feel like if you can get this right from the start, I feel like it's going to be helpful through their entire volunteer experience, right? And
Mhm.
so when
That's
you're
right.
recruiting, it's not just something that you're trying to pressure them. It's not, a lot of times I feel like you can slip into well, we need this and you love Jesus, so you got to do this. That is
Right.
that may get you somebody to show up for one day, but it is not something that's going to be sustainable and create
Nope.
that joy for the long haul, right? And
Right, right,
so
right.
what I would say is that volunteer engagement, it really begins before someone ever joins the team. And I feel like if they're recruited through guilt, if they're recruited through pressure, or
Mm.
even that place of, again, desperation, they're going to start off on the wrong foot. It's the wrong
Yeah.
foundation for how they serve. But really, if you can get people to really lean in and say, okay, listen, this is an invitation to be a part of something bigger than yourself. This is
Mm.
something that is going to bring you life when you get to see how God can use your gifts, your abilities, the things that He's put inside of you. Let me help you to get to use those gifts in a way that's gonna bring life to you once a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. I love that.
Isn't that
I
isn't
love
that so much more compelling?
absolutely 100%. And again, I mean, you'll hear me say this probably in every podcast, but like, is that ingrained into your culture? Because if it is, then
Yeah.
that's expected and people feel it, right? Like we talked about at the very beginning, they can feel why the other people around them are serving. Is it because they're obligated to serve or because they feel
Yes.
passionate in that role or they're gifted in that role, which kind of segues into an intentional invitation is, are you taking time and maybe it's not
Yeah.
you lead pastor because depending on the size of your church this isn't always possible, but
Right.
are you and your team and trusted leaders among your team, are you taking time to get to know your members, your congregation, folks that have been involved with your church for a little while? Are you taking time to get to know them, understand their gifts a little bit, so
Mm.
that as you do invite them into different areas of your church, maybe plug them in where you think they would be most effective and say, Kendall, you've given
Yes.
this example before of your own personal testimony where people have said like, you look like you're really gifted in this area of technology and what
Right.
was it again? It wasn't singing. I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
But
Definitely
working in the tech
definitely not
booth, the
singing. It was
prod
tech for
booth,
sure.
yeah, and saying, "Hey, Kendall, have you thought about serving in this area?" So, I think that just first of all, it makes people feel so seen and recognized, and like, who doesn't like being
100%.
told, like, "I see this good thing in you." How life-giving is that? And then 2, they're more likely to say yes if it's something that they enjoy and care about, right? Instead of
Yes.
like, maybe teenage boy, "Hey, can you help take care of babies?" That's not the right person to ask about
Probably not
that,
gonna be it. Yeah.
which is a silly example, obviously, hopefully we're not doing that, but, taking time to get to know people. If you are over volunteer recruitment at your ministry, get to know people. Get to know people
Yeah.
who, come on a regular basis. Ask other volunteers on your team, "Hey, I see you talking to so and so every week. Is that a friend of yours? What are some gifts that they have? Would they be willing to jump in?" So I think
Well,
that's
You've given so much good information here. I want to recap it a little bit. So number one, you said like in a best case scenario, you are pairing somebody with something that they are gifted to do. Couple ways
Mhm.
that you can do that. I love that you said you gave the example of just seeing that in someone, knowing that they're good at technology and plugging them
Sure.
in, saying, "Hey, you would be great to get plugged in on our production team," or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. So I feel like that's like a best case scenario when you already know them and you have that relationship and you pair them with something. Another practical
Mhm.
way is, we do something at our church where we have people go through a gifts assessment, and
Yeah, I
it
love
just
that.
naturally it pulls out those things that they're interested in that they may
Mhm.
not even realize there's a ministry context for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we find out, oh man, they're really good at connecting with people, and so man, you would be great to be on this team.
Yeah.
And so like offering that and using those tools that are available, there are a million different assessments that are out there. We've talked about them on our show before. But yeah, there's different ones that are out there available for that. And then I also love the idea of if you have someone on your team already who
Mhm.
loves serving,
Right.
having them to invite their friend, somebody that they
Yes.
know, to serve alongside them,
Yeah.
they're going to have a great time. And we have people
That's
that are
yes.
just like that, right? Like they love serving, and we've put it
Mhm.
out there like, hey, we saw that, your friend has started coming to church. Do you think you could invite them to serve
Yes.
alongside you when you
Exactly.
serve?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Different ways to
Yeah.
get people plugged in, but man, I feel like that's an invitation. That's not coming from a place of desperation, right?
100%. I think too, you can do this on the front end or you can kind of do this on the back end, right? So like this can segue
Yeah.
into number 3 if we're ready to move on.
Yeah, for sure.
Make it easy to take the first step. So that's number 3, make it easy to take the first step. So back to the spiritual gifting, back to the gifting in general, right? Like
Mhm.
yes, we will always have certain areas that need more help than others. Fine. If you would like to lead with
Yes.
that as you're presenting this opportunity, maybe from the stage or
Yep.
in like a next steps class or something, you can always lead with, hey, we really actually could use more help in this particular area, greeting or parking or whatever,
Yeah.
anything but kids ministry and guest services. Um, you can bring that up, you can bubble that up in those areas, but also on your form that you have, maybe to intake volunteer interest, right? So you've got a QR code or something that they can scan with their phone. Hey, if you'd like to serve in some capacity, scan this QR code.
Yes.
Right there on the form, you can provide check boxes that they can select,
Yes.
maybe the area that they would like to serve in or an area that maybe they feel strong in. So maybe you don't do a whole spiritual gifts assessment. We recommend it. I think it's a great way to go. But if that's not something that's within your process now, can you
Right.
simply put some of those giftings, baseline giftings, on a form for them to self-select what strengths they have maybe,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
specifically which areas they would like to serve in.
Yes.
And so, but again, this is kind of blending 2 points together, but really that easy entry point, focusing back specifically on number 3 here, is such an important piece of volunteer recruiting and engaging. I think you can use this
Yes.
principle of an easy intake or easy communication, or you can use it in multiple areas, in multiple stages of this volunteer journey.
Well, and we talked about something as simple as having someone invite a friend along to help, but at
Mhm.
some point you want to have something that's a little bit more official, right?
Right. Yes,
You
yes,
want to
yes.
have something that they can fill out so that it can be a part of your process. Somebody can follow up
Mhm.
with them. We can make sure that they
Right.
don't slip through the cracks, and that is where making that first step easy. Having like a designated place, and you mentioned a form, and that is something that
Yeah.
can be as simple as your having that plugged in on your website. But there are several different ways that you can have people get into that form, right? It isn't just like a
Mhm.
one. You mentioned having a QR code or having a slide up at church that just says like, "Hey, if you're interested in serving, here's your place." I love that we have
Mhm.
technology available now where you can have like the tap signs on the back of your
Absolutely,
seats
yes.
so that you
Yes.
can while they're thinking about it and while you're telling that story on stage of someone who's started volunteering and making a difference, they can tap that. And at different times, like I think a lot of the times they think that like a QR code has to go to just one place or a tap tag has to just go to one place. but you can have it go to a hub, right? And it's, you
Right.
have different options and they can say, yeah, I want to serve. And it takes them to that
Exactly.
form. But whatever your mechanism is for getting people there, definitely recommend being a little, we have the technology available. It doesn't have to be a clipboard that's hanging on a bulletin board somewhere, right?
Right.
We have the technology, we talked about on one of our other podcasts, Jess, having people text in a keyword,
Mhm.
text volunteer to this number. However you wanna set it up for your church, just make it
Right.
easy so that when they're thinking about it, they can sign up for it, and that so that your team members can follow up with them or your leaders can follow up with them, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so having a hub, I actually love that idea for the tap. And as we're talking through these features, as always, these are things that you can leverage through ministry brands, through Amplify if you want to. We have both the tap, we've got the text, we've got the QR codes. So, and obviously we've got the form. So, what happens though after people fill those things out, right? So, like, this is a benefit to both
Right.
the person signing up to be a volunteer. So let's take a minute and just like you said, Kendall, they go, it's seamless, super easy. However they get to this form, it shouldn't be extensively long. Make sure you get enough information so that you feel confident getting back in touch with them. Whoever's maybe over the volunteer
Yes.
recruitment team, they have enough information to like move forward with this. But also back to that person who is on the volunteer recruitment team, in a perfect world, in the name of the Lord, you're gonna have more volunteers signing up than you know what to do with, right? So, like, how can we make
We're
that
believing for
process
it, right?
yes, absolutely. How can you make that process for you, dear volunteer facilitator person, as easy as possible for you? So, as those submissions come in, you can set up a workflow, and those can plug right into your church management software,
Yes.
and so then you can look through those form submissions. You can drop them into different groups. So if you've got a group of kids ministry folks, if you've got a group of parking folks, you can have those forms go to those specific groups. And then if you're the one that's supposed to contact everybody, great. You should have all the information you need. You can
Yes.
set up an automated email or text message just to say, hey, thanks so much for your submission. We will be contacting you soon. And then even from there, you can take that a step further. And we've got, our service planning tool that allows you to plug volunteers in at service times for their
Yeah.
specific job. So, like, we can even
That's
go
exactly right.
right
Yeah.
a step further. All of this can be automated for you. But at the end of the day, really inviting people in, that's something that machines can't do. That's
That's right.
on us. So, making it easy is really important for the person that is willing to serve.
Yeah.
We gotta really be good stewards of that willingness. And so getting in touch with them super quickly, either, through an automated touch point or through a phone call or text message personalized. Those things are super important. I think that people recognize that. They feel valued.
Yes.
Their serving is now acknowledged right away, and you're excited to plug them in. They've got clear next steps. All of that really encourages that kind of cultural, like, what is your purpose? Why are you joining? It's not just because we want to throw you into a slot. We want you
Yes.
to understand how appreciated this is and that you are taking part in worship that weekend or, for an extended period of time.
Something that is just super helpful, just remember to lean into, showing off how other people are, getting that sense of fulfillment that they've made a difference. As make that a part of your process. Some
Yes.
ideas of the ways that you could do that are, maybe that next step, whether it be a QR code or the tap or the keyword or whatever it may be, on that sign up page, it's 100% okay to include a quote from someone who says, "Oh man, I've
Yeah.
loved serving on Sundays. It's been such a fulfilling experience for me." Or we
Right.
have a video of a testimony of someone telling about how much of a difference it made in their life when they started
Mm.
serving. Having
Mhm.
that in your follow-up email when people sign up, after they sign up and are interested to serve, having that and saying, "Hey, as we follow up, we'll follow up with you on Monday, but here until then, here's a quick video talking about the impact that your serving can make." Any
That's
way that
awesome.
you can bring those in, bring, some of those proof points in of showing people that, "Man, I am making a good decision with this." I feel like that can be super helpful, and that technology can help to bridge the gap until that team member can follow up with them on Monday or, whenever you have your folks do that part of the workflow.
What a good idea. I love that, Kendall.
Pretty cool, and again, it's just making people feel that they're making the right decision in that moment, because so often we go off of feeling, right? Like, we wanna make sure that
Yeah.
we're doing the right thing, so well,
Yeah.
the next tip that I wanna give you, for all of our listeners out there, number 4 is to train volunteers so that they feel confident and not confused. I don't know about you, Jess, but have you ever served somewhere or ever volunteered somewhere and you just felt like you didn't know where to go? Have you ever felt like that?
Mhm.
Like, especially, like, when you're first getting started in a role or maybe, like, you're
Yeah.
filling in somewhere where you don't normally serve. Um,
Yes.
I feel like that excitement just fades
Uh-huh.
so quickly, lightning
Uh-huh.
fast, when
Yes.
you feel unprepared.
Yeah, or, like, there's not so, like, we've talked about this before, but there's, like, people who, like, walk into a room and have eyes to see, like, "I have eyes to
Mm,
see what needs to be happening here."
yeah.
I think just equally as bad as, like, no one showed up or, like,
Mhm.
it's just a confusing scenario is walking into somewhere where, like, everyone's a busy bee and nobody's able to give you direction or
Yeah.
acknowledge that you're there, like, that falls into the other side of, lack of clarity, but
Yeah.
100%, I think well, and you just don't feel appreciated. You're like, "Why am I here? Why did I sign up for this?" It
Yeah.
feels like they've
Well
got it or whatever.
well, we know that confidence grows when people know what to do, when
Mhm.
they know why this matters, like,
Yeah.
what they need to do, where they need to go, why I'm doing this. They
Mhm.
know who to turn to, who's gonna support them. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, they need to know what success looks like. So, like, if
Yeah.
I'm winning at this and doing the right thing, what does that look like? And so I feel
Yes.
like those are kind of some of the elements that you want to make sure that when you have a volunteer come in, whether it's their first day or even revisiting some roles that people
100%.
who have
Yeah.
been serving for, a year or more, bringing clarity to that because I feel like you don't want people to not know what to do, and even more,
Mhm.
you don't want people to feel like they're succeeding at something when they're not doing the
Right.
thing that's most important, right? And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
if you can give people, clear direction and give them, an idea of what winning looks like, that's gonna take them so far, and it's gonna be good for you as the leader, and it's
Mhm.
also gonna help them to stay in this for the long term, right? To be able to take this, and enjoy what they're doing for years to come.
Yeah, and I think there's, strategically 2 ways to look at this too, like, you've got your macro training,
Mm,
this is our mission, this is our vision, this is our purpose, this is why we do
yeah.
it, right? And then, like, so that's, like, the purpose training, and then there's also, like, here's what volunteering at our church looks like in general. You're going to be
Yes.
serving every other week. You're going to
Right.
be expected to arrive 10 minutes early regardless of where you're serving. So, like, there's some things that are, like, at a macro level, like a higher level for all
Yes.
volunteers, and then you've got that micro training
Yes.
per role. And I think there's opportunity in both of those to pull in the purpose, right? So,
Yes.
like, turn in, like, gosh, I hope I'm doing this right. And this would probably be more at the micro level, like the individual role. Gosh, I hope I'm doing this right too. I know I'm making a difference.
Yes.
So what does success look like at the macro level? What are the expectations? And then at the micro level, like, everything should go back to that purpose. Everything should go back to, like, why are we doing this? Like,
Yes.
we have to change diapers with another person standing there. Why am I
That's
doing
exact
this? Right? Because the
you've
purpose
gotta
is
talk
to
about those small
protect our
details.
kiddos. Like,
That's
there's
right.
there if you don't give that clarity, first of all, it's confusing and it's a poor experience for your volunteers, but in some
Yes.
cases it might even be dangerous, so
Yes.
so parking lot attendants, I'm looking at you. You got to wear your vest. Like,
Yes.
there's some things that are really, really important, and not only to bring clarity, but bring protection and uphold that vision and that mission.
100%. And so, your church every church is going to be a little bit different, but some suggestions for this so that you can make sure that you've trained your volunteers correctly. Something that we do at our church is that we do for all volunteers up front, we do something called team orientation. And so
Mhm.
that's going to take them through some things that apply to every single team members, things they
Yeah.
need to know, like, hey, this is how you're going to get requests to volunteer. This is how, when you're expected to show up. When you get here, what do you do? When you get
Mhm.
here, Jess, you've used this example a million times. Where do I put my purse when I get here? Where
Yeah.
do I check in? What time do we leave?
Right.
For us, we provide breakfast for all of our volunteers.
Mhm.
What time do you be there to make sure you don't miss out on your bagel? Those are
Yeah.
things that we go over on that and what we expect of them. And then also for each of our individual teams, so that may be
Mhm.
your guest experience team, your worship team, your production team. There are going
Right.
to be things, again, to your point, Jess, that just apply to that area of
Yeah.
ministry. And so for them, they may be okay for worship and production. Their call time may be earlier than it is for every other team. Okay, well, what time is that? What do we wear when we serve on this team? Where do
Yeah,
we
good
go?
idea.
What do we do? There's going to be things that are just for that. And then even further, there's going to be okay for this individual role for that team. What do I need to make sure that I do? Again, parking team, you're going to make sure that you have your vest on, that you've got
Mhm.
those things just right. Or, you mentioned in kids ministry, what are the rules for that? But those are
Mhm.
done. We have I don't want to call it a handbook. That makes it seem more extravagant than it is. But we do have a little flip, like a small booklet of sorts that
Mhm.
has individual things. And then we even have sections that we've used in the past where it says, what does winning look like for this individual role?
I love
Again,
that.
that's a lot, but at the end of the day, you wanna make sure that you've done your part to set clear expectations, that you
Mhm.
give that hands-on learning, and so, that may be going through that training together once a week, once a month, going back pairing new volunteers with mentors, but
Yes.
overall, just don't here's what I wanna make sure that I say, make sure that you're continuing to go over this information. It is not a one time and done situation, right? That
So
you're spending
true.
time to revisit this kind of content.
Oh, yeah, especially if you've got people that are serving once a month, even twice a month, man. There's a whole
Yeah.
week of life
Mhm.
happening between
That's
services,
exactly right.
and my brain is full day to day. I'm like, what do I need to do today? So I think it's super important to continue going over all that.
Yeah, it's so important. And like we're in the age of technology. It may look like doing something like a Teams call or a Zoom call
Yeah.
once a month. It may look, we can use technology to our advantage on this.
And that can be a multi-purpose meeting, right? It doesn't have
Mhm.
to only be training. It can
That's right.
be also, and should be also, a moment to celebrate wins
Yes.
and have other volunteers, step up and take lead. Like, we had a great conversation with Mac Lake, and he was
Yes.
specifically saying, like, who on your teams can you identify as a leader and help build them up to
Yes.
lead among your volunteers, right? And so, those meetings, if you're doing them once, this just came to me, but as you're doing those, can you maybe shove someone up and say, hey, you're leading this week? Not in the
Yeah.
moment, but give them some prep time. But that's a great
Yes.
opportunity for somebody else to take the lead and then have some recognition as
That's
someone that
right.
they can ask questions to.
Well, and it's good that you brought that up and getting together because our next tip that we want to give is number 5, and it is build community around the team. I feel
Yeah,
like this is one of the best tips that we can give for keeping your volunteers engaged and excited to serve. We talked
very
about
much.
having
Yes.
people with, serving with their friends and volunteering with people that they enjoy spending time with. But I feel like this is something that you can build, even though it's a team, it can feel like family. It can
Hmm.
feel like a small group. And people may start to serve because of, that individual role. But I feel like so often they stay and they keep showing up because of the relationships that they built there. And,
Right.
like
Yes.
people, they probably don't stay just like where they serve. They stay where they feel like they belong.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I
And
feel
that
like that
takes a little bit of extra work.
It
What were
it
you gonna say,
does,
Kendall?
it does. Well, like, I was just gonna say it's like the glue. That community is like the glue
Yes.
that, can keep people. It makes it sticky. And, like, I feel like so often, as you said, like you were mentioning, like getting together over a team meeting or something like
Mhm.
that. It can't just be about making things better. It can't just be
Right.
about the rules or, things we need to improve. They've
Mhm.
gotta feel like they belong there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and again, going back to that mission and that purpose, I think that's gonna be the
Mm,
common ground. We are all
yes.
here because we want to accomplish X, Y,
Yes.
or Z. Okay,
Yes.
what are some examples of you accomplishing X, Y, or Z this week in your teams? So I
Yes.
started to say this, but it requires a little bit of extra, I said work, but what I really mean is intentionality because you
Mhm.
are able to a lot of
Yes.
times repurpose the time that you have already requested from your volunteer. So like if they already know they're serving every other Sunday, um, maybe build into their schedule a 10-minute huddle before. Kendall said y'all do breakfast. That's
Yes.
a great time. Maybe yes, we're just sitting breakfast and eating together. Maybe we're playing an icebreaker game. It's a little awkward, but we're going to get to know each other a little bit better.
Right.
However you want to repurpose that time, maybe not repurpose, but just include an element that's
Include it.
building community, right?
Yes.
So I meals are always a yes for me, and food
Yeah.
brings people together.
Yeah.
Just it's scriptural. So and then maybe coffee after service. What can you do? Maybe like seasonal gatherings makes so much sense.
Yes.
They're already kind of hopefully expecting to be getting together around that time. But even during those allotted calendar moments where you're doing like, we're going to do a volunteer Christmas party. How intentional are you with that time? Include fun games where people are forced to move outside of their
Mhm.
little bubble and get to know
Yep.
other volunteers, maybe even from other volunteer teams. Yeah, I don't know. Those are just some ideas, but
Those are
you have to work for it.
those are great ideas, and yeah, people, it's gonna take them out of their comfort zone a little bit at first,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm telling you, it can make a lasting difference, and yeah, at minimum, when you get together on Sunday to serve together, just huddling the people up. And
Mhm.
while we're all together, yes, let's remind them to make sure that they're doing this. Let's go over the day. But, taking prayer requests, right?
Yeah.
Asking each other
It's
how
good.
they're doing and just hearing that the person that's serving next to you, something that they're going through that week.
Yeah.
It brings people together, praying for one another. It makes a big, big difference. But yeah, when you can have a team meal after church and say like, hey, on this Sunday, all of our team, we're going to stay after, or we're going to go to this place and we're going to eat together,
Yeah.
or something like that. Even those small things, they make such a big difference. But yeah, at minimum, when they come together to serve, just rallying everybody up and having that quick 5 minutes can make a big difference. Now, if like you said, if we can make it around our meal, even better. So if we can have our huddle and eat a bagel at the same time, come on, that's going to be a win.
Let's do it. Not a lot of talking with a bagel though, but yeah, I'm with you. Bagels are gotta chew those for a minute. I love them, but yeah.
I love that. Again, making it a place where people belong. That's what's going to keep
Mhm,
them staying around because they're going to know
mhm.
that someone's waiting on me. They're going to know when I'm not there. And for the leaders out there, I'd say that's even more important. That community side is just as important as making sure that the tasks are done.
Oh, yes. Very much yes.
This works hand in hand with our next tip, number 6, and it's to show appreciation often and specifically. Let
Mhm.
me tell you a little bit about what I mean with that. I feel like volunteers, they stay engaged when they feel seen and they feel valued.
Mm,
And, like we talk about, I love the Christmas banquet, or, like the volunteer appreciation days and things like that. But it can't just be a one day a year thing, right? Like
yeah.
showing that celebration is something that just has to be woven into the culture. And so I feel like showing appreciation often, that can look like a lot of different things. But celebrating milestones, celebrating like things that your team did well as a whole. But then
Mhm.
specifically, what I mean by that is calling out individuals and saying, guys, I want to highlight something really quickly. We talk a lot about this value. Let me tell
Mhm.
you how this person last
Yes.
Sunday they were a perfect example of that value that we talk about every single week. When they
So good.
did this, that really showed off. And so can we give it up for them today and like celebrating
Yes.
that, letting
Yes.
them know that you saw them walk out
Mm.
that value can be
Yeah.
can be huge, right?
It's huge, and this is like a teacher hack. I taught for like a minute and then but I use this
Okay.
in my
I
kids ministry
I
days.
all right.
I taught at Mother's Day out. It was it was 3-year-olds. I'm still teaching, but it wasn't a school or anything. But one of the best hacks was when you needed everybody to sit down or be quiet, you'd say, "Oh, I love the way Johnny's sitting with his hands folded in his lap. Oh, I love how Sally's sitting at her desk quietly." And then what do all the other kids do? They want to be like Sally. They want to be like, I forgot the other kid's name that I just said. And so they immediately start doing
Yes.
this too. So what this does is when you publicly celebrate someone in service, what that does is it inspires other people to get involved as well. So this is contagious. It goes beyond building your own volunteer team. It is critical for longevity, right? And that's just
Yes.
human nature. We want to know, am I doing it right? Am I doing a good job? I know me personally, Jess Moore, I need this like I need air. And I'm fully aware of that. I've had to tell every manager I've ever had, like, I just need you to tell me I'm doing a good job. If I'm not, I need you to tell me that too. But um, yeah, I
Right.
think I think this is
Right.
really important for the longevity of your volunteers. So yes, celebration within your volunteer teams to kind of like level up, like, hey, it's a gentle way to remind everybody of the expectation. But then when you do this in service more publicly, then it's inspiring other people to kind of
That's
join your
exactly right.
volunteer team. So I think both are really important. And then I'd say a third way is very personal. So if you're going up to one person and saying, "Hey, Kendall, I saw you do X, Y, and Z. It was fantastic." So I think that one-on-one
Yes.
thanks or a gift card, like, "Hey, you've been here for,
Yep.
a month. You've been officially serving with us for a month, and we just want to say thank you for everything you've done." So lots of ways to do this.
Well, and I would just say again, have that woven into your culture where
Yep.
where you have a culture of celebration,
Mhm.
because we know that celebration is one of the strongest fuels for
Mhm.
longevity, for getting people to
Mhm.
stick
Mhm.
around for years. And
Yep.
having moments where you don't want to do the same thing over and over and over. It's good to
Mhm.
mix it up, right? And so sometimes that is going to look like a pat on the back in person.
Yeah.
Thank you. I saw that you went above and beyond today. Thank
Yes.
you for what
Yes.
you did.
Yes.
And then there's other times where a handwritten note is going to make a bigger impact, or highlighting someone in front of the team or on
Yep.
social media, and like you said, what'd you say, Jess, in front of the whole congregation,
Yeah.
right? Like in
Yeah.
service.
Right.
There's going to be different places for different moments, and think like if
Yeah.
you want to be doing this all the time, have that culture of celebration so that it doesn't seem forced, it doesn't seem like something that's so like out of the
Yes.
blue, but it's something that's going in. And I feel like the biggest hack, Jess, you're a parent, you know this. And I hate that we keep acting like our volunteers are children. We've said they're in the in the but I'm a dad. I think about my own kids. I know how I have to parent them differently, and they have different
Yeah.
love languages and ways that they feel appreciation.
Yes.
Same
True,
way
true,
for those
true.
volunteers. It's
Yeah.
like, man, if you know that volunteer A, they really feel loved when you show appreciation this way, and that
Right.
volunteer B, they feel it a different way. Well, the more
Right.
you get to know these people, the more you can speak
Mm.
their language.
Love
And
language. Yeah.
so, like,
That's
yeah,
so true.
yeah. And so, like, over time, you may realize, like, yeah, it goes so much further to,
Right.
be able to show appreciation, this way for different people. So, again,
Yeah. Great
the big
point.
thing is show it often. You know,
Mm.
you're never going to regret showing appreciation for the people who were making your Sundays happen.
Exactly.
But when you can make it specific, when you can call out something that you want to see more of, man, it just
Mm.
accomplishes so much.
It really does. And it's not realistic to expect your volunteer team, your volunteer recruitment team to remember how long somebody's been serving. So lean into the technology where you can on this.
Amen. Yes.
When did they submit their submission? When was the first Sunday that they served? These things will automatically be tracked in your system if you're using your system, right? And so, like, for example, in Amplify, we know when the form was submitted. We know the first time they served. We know
Yes.
how long they've served. You can even set up some workflows in there to say, when Kendall has volunteered for a month, or anyone who, after they hit an anniversary, 1 year mark of their
Yes.
serviversary,
That's it. I love
there's an
stealing that. Serviversary, stealing that.
serviversary.
Yeah.
Can you get a notification sent to your volunteer recruitment team to say, "Hey, celebrate Kendall. He's been here for a year today." You can do that.
Yes.
You can set that up in the
That's
in the
right.
platform so that you don't have to be remembering everybody's dates. You don't need your day planner with everybody's
That's right.
Serviversary in there. You
That's
just
right.
lean into the technology where you can.
And that just brings up birthdays. Come on, that's an easy way to
Yeah.
use that
Oh my
software.
gosh,
Tell me all the
yes.
birthdays happening last week and this week so that when we get all
Yes.
together, we can celebrate.
Call them out. Yeah, that's great.
Love it. All right. Our next tip, number 7, is to protect your volunteers from burnout. I feel
Mm,
like this is one that's very close to my heart because I feel like I have personally experienced that ministry fatigue. I've
yeah,
experienced those times when I just felt burnout and the things that I used to love serving in these different roles in ministry it just didn't feel the same way as before. I just had
right,
lost my spark. And
right.
I don't want to see other people to go through that in these churches. If churches want volunteers to stay excited, they've got to give them permission to rest.
That's right, that's right. And Kendall, I would have guessed that about you because you are a hard worker and you're a perfectionist. So, this is the
Yeah, no
tendency
doubt.
is
No doubt. Thank you.
we've got these volunteers that we know these guys are like our A team. They're never late. They're
Yeah,
always on time. They have
right.
those eyes to see what needs to be done. Be careful with that. Be careful with that
Yes.
because there is such a temptation to keep relying on the same people.
Yes.
In fact, you should have enough volunteers kind of buffered in so that Kendall, for the fourth week in a row, offers to fill in for someone. You say, Kendall, no, you need a
Right.
rest. We're pouring back into you, right? And so, what
Yes.
can you do? How can you set up systems ahead of this burnout, both emotional support, mental health support, if your volunteers
Yes.
need it? My goodness, and then tactical, like tangible support, like an
Right.
additional maybe roster of volunteers that you can pull from that fill in where they need to. What can you do to be preventative about this and not be responsive or reactive when you're seeing that multiple team members, multiple volunteers are now feeling burned out and you're losing volunteers very quickly. The other thing is um, people talk, right? And so, like, when they do get burned out, that is contagious. And so, if they do go to other people on the phone, well, I've been here had how many
That's right.
weeks and I just feel
That's right.
exhausted and I feel like no one else steps up. And that's not great for your culture.
No.
That's
No.
going to tear that down really, really quick. And so, checking in regularly with your team members, those folks that you've seen 2, 3 weeks in a row, like, hey, Kendall, you okay? Because
That's
you've been
right.
here a lot and I'm worried
Yeah.
about you. We don't want this to feel like you don't have a choice. And
That's right.
so that takes some intentionality. But also, actually, that's a good way to use your systems too. Like, hey, Kendall's been here. Let me look back and see how many weeks now he's served.
That's exactly right.
Um, and you can probably set that up in the system too to be like, "No, Kendall can't serve again.
Well, and
You're
having
maxed
that
out."
establishing the cadence in your
Yeah,
software so that you have those regular rotations because,
yeah,
I feel like one of the best ways that you can do this is making it so that it's not an every week commitment, that you're
right,
automatically scheduling people in for kinda like an every other situation, and every church is gonna
right,
be different, and
right.
different roles are gonna be different. However, making it so that you automatically have those times scheduled in where people can
Mm,
come and all they have to do is receive.
right,
Because I can tell you, at the end of the day, more than we want them to do something for the church, it's what we want them to get as they are. We want them to
right.
receive. We want them to hear from God. We want from them to come and be able to worship and to be
Mm-mm,
refreshed in that way, to come and hear that message without thinking about, oh, what time is it? I've got to go back and get to
exactly.
my spot. And so, being able for them to come and, to be able to receive is so much more important than, exactly what,
Mm,
getting every single moment of them scheduled or
yeah,
volunteering. And so,
exactly.
like, making sure they have those moments built in, and that's a great way to use the technology to help.
Yeah, yeah. And, I think too, just having plenty of lead time to be mentally and spiritually
Mhm. Mhm.
prepared to serve in your role. And so, how
Yes.
early are you sending those schedules out? Nobody
Yes.
should be canceling trips because they just found out they're
Oh, yeah.
serving. My
Right.
goodness. So, if you have all that information ahead of time, then people can be more consistent. They can rely on that schedule
Yes.
month over month. And they can, come fully prepared mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to serve in their role.
It's good. Well, kinda piggybacking off of this, again, what you want for your volunteers, not what you want from them.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, our tip, and our final one for today is to keep inviting volunteers to grow.
Mhm.
I'm super passionate about this because again, it's what we want for you. And I
Yes.
can't always listen when people come and they volunteer, you can't pay every single person who does something for your church, right? That is not
Right.
sustainable. That
Right.
is what volunteering is about, is getting
Yes.
involved in a way that doesn't you don't get compensated for. But
Exactly.
I can't guarantee you payment for this. I can't say that you're going to get wealthy from this, but I can guarantee if you come and you serve on my team at our church, you are
Yeah.
going to grow. You're going to
Mm.
walk out. You're going to be a better employee at your work. You're going to be
Yeah.
a better you're going to be a better um, husband or wife at home. You're going to be a better
Yeah.
parent to your children because we're going to give you opportunities that you can grow and get better. You're not going to be able to
Yes.
get in this environment and walk out the same way that you came in because we're going to do this with excellence. We're going to do this with purpose. We're going to
That's
walk,
great.
walk in the things that, the way that we, know, that God has called us to. And so I love to give volunteers that excitement and that growth because if someone stays in the same place for years without development, without new
Mm.
opportunities, they're going to slowly disengage. And I don't want that for
Exactly.
anybody. I want them
Yeah.
to say that, man, when I first started serving on the team, I was this way. I wasn't very excited. I wasn't, but because they invested in me, man,
Yes.
I'm this way now. And
Right.
so
Right.
if you can provide those opportunities for them to even grow, like giving them more responsibility, helping them to learn concepts and values that are going to help them in every area of their
Mhm.
life, man, that's giving value back to them. And that's what I want for every
100%.
volunteer.
Yes, yes. And again, this takes intentionality. Are you
Oh yeah.
spending time with your volunteers? Are you understanding kind of where they're at in their spiritual journey? Can you
Yes.
pair people together to be mentored?
Yes.
I think that there is so much opportunity. In a way, these volunteer teams can almost function like a small group, right?
Yes.
And God will bring people to your team that need to be there. And so he
It's good.
has provision for them for this. If you want to pour into volunteers, this is kind of, straddling into the discipleship piece. But
Yes.
if that's a desire for your church, as it should be, because it does, again, bring longevity, it brings life, it ties everything back to your mission and your purpose as you're pouring into these volunteers, God will provide. God will provide those mentors. God will provide the time. God will provide the creative ideas that you can help build these
It's
teams
good.
closer to each other and closer to the Lord.
I think that's so good. And, even having opportunities where if there is someone who you see who is, you see the leadership potential in them,
Hmm.
being able to offer leadership development for them,
Yeah.
or as a team as a whole, say this month,
Hmm.
how much better would we be if all of our team learned to do this one thing better, or were
Yeah.
to
Good.
apply this one value? And so
Hmm.
taking that time, and maybe it's as simple as getting everybody on a Zoom call. Maybe it's even
Yeah.
simpler. Maybe it's you as a leader recording a video and sending it,
Mm.
emailing it to everybody on your team.
Yeah.
Or even it is just as getting that coffee. And again, everyone's
Mm.
schedule is different, and you got to figure out what's
Right.
going to work for you.
Right.
But can your volunteers that you're leading say that they grew in the last month?
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's a challenge as a leader in my own church. That's a challenge. I hear that and I say, man, I want to do even better than we are today. But
Yeah.
saying like, okay, how can I grow these volunteers? What do I want for them, not just from them?
Yes. I love that. So good.
So many good tips today, and and I even say this just to encourage all of our listeners today as we wrap up. I hear this as I serve in my own church, and I say, man, these are things that I want to work on too. I don't think that
Hmm.
any church has all of these things figured out to the
Oh,
T,
yeah. No.
but it is that constant sense of, okay, what can we do better? How can we grow as a ministry?
Yes, absolutely. How can we continue to tie everything back to our mission,
Hmm.
and
Yes,
not operate out of a place of reaction or
yes,
understaffedness? I don't know what the right word
hmm
I'm looking for is, but like, are you
sounds pretty good.
reacting or are you being proactive about this?
Yeah,
And I think just seeing your volunteer ministry as an opportunity, not just
hmm
to keep the church moving forward, but
yes,
like discipleship and encouraging people and making them feel seen. And so
Yes.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of intentionality, but hopefully these tips have helped. I think these are pretty actionable, whether on a small scale or a large scale at your church.
Yes.
This should be at least one of these tips is something you can implement even as soon as this week.
Yes. Well, and I think at the end of the day, as you're leading volunteers, really you're leading people. This is
Hmm.
all about people, helping people to use their gifts, helping them to find community, to grow,
Hmm.
to and experience the joy of being part of something that's bigger than themselves. And so
Hmm.
this week, help volunteers to feel known, help them to feel supported, help them to feel appreciated and connected. You're never going to waste time doing
Hmm.
those things, and it's
That's
going to
right.
help your people to feel engaged. It's going to help them to feel excited to serve. And so, what a good conversation this has been, Jess. Thank you for talking through these tips with me today.
Yeah, happy to. This has been great.
Yeah, I hope for all of you listeners out there that this has been valuable to you. All the things that we've talked about today, we will link up in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about the software that we've talked about, Ministry Brands Amplify. Of course, we'd love to get you connected with that. We'll make sure that that's all linked up. And we'll also in the show notes put a couple of resources that can help you for other
Hmm.
conversations that we've had about volunteering that I
Yeah.
think will help go a long way. Because I feel like when volunteers thrive, the whole church can thrive. It's strengthened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. You're moving as a body and it's a really
Hmm.
practical, tangible way to see the impact that your church can have in your community.
I love that. Well, hey, listeners out there, if this episode has encouraged you, would you consider sharing it with a friend or even leaving us a review? That helps us to keep equipping leaders just like you. Again, hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're enjoying our show. And until next time, keep leading well right there in your community. And we'll see you right back here next week on Church Leadership Lab.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.